benefit other communities, because it often gets just stuck in Portland or Boston or New York or Pontiac or Flint or Ogden or anywhere. And so we're trying to liberate and connect that energy. And Monica and Jim have been, fantastic partners with a lot of energy. So we're always excited to be here with them.
That's so cool.
Yes. And thank you.
Well, and so you're talking a lot about, and this is Earth Day. So I've had 4 different Earth Day events in the last 3 days, because I went to Lansing to work on environmental issues and education issues. And I often end up involved in technology things because I'm the only person in those houses who has my kind of background. And I love it too. I will admit that I'm total geek. But I also work a ton in the environmental space. So that's, I'm the minority vice chair on the environmental committee in the Senate. And I'm also on the environmental budgets, both the EQ, the quality budget, as well as the DNR budget, and spend a lot of time, working on those very things, and especially this week, just talking about it nonstop. And so listening to your stories, Ryan, I keep thinking about, let's do something cool. So do you guys know that there's a huge recycling set of bills that are coming out of the House of Representatives, maybe today actually, but soon, over to the Senate. And those bills will likely actually work their way all the way through the system and get signed, because we are failing miserably in recycling in Michigan. And it's nice that there's enough, and the bills have been worked on for a long time. This is not a sudden new idea, but and it sounds old fashioned, right? Because most of us, I certainly remember give a hoot, don't pollute. And I mean, there was all kinds of good messaging in the old days, but we've lost that. And now that we have even more capability for what we can recycle, we have less people participating in it. So, I mean, that would be an interesting thing to work on a project like that, because I know there's going to be a lot of resources coming statewide. If you think about projects that will have other ways of getting support or being connected to a bigger picture. Plus, kids can really understand it. If I remember, that whole recycling thing that happened in the 70s was driven largely by kids. Yeah, right. Education in schools and elementary schools even, right? So what a cool, fun thing to do, to work on something like that. But I also spend a lot of time working in the water space. I have been an activist for a long time. I'm now working on Great Lakes issues. I'm on the Great Lakes Legislative Caucus, actually, working in shoreline erosion and a bunch of stuff like that. But I'm also just trying to figure out how to make sure that everyone has access to clean, safe, affordable water. And when you think about water in communities, I travel to, whenever there's a fountain, I go to it, right? And there's always kids hovering around a fountain, whether they can get in it or not, they're going to try, and they're going to put their fingers in it, and there's going to be stuff that goes on around water. So it would be interesting to have something that was water related. If it was a fountain, I mean, there could be some kind of connection to the bigger issue of water availability and affordability. Sorry, you want me to stop?
No. I just got something for you.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, we actually have a new water affordability coalition that we're just sort of getting going, because we have some resources coming in too, right? So because of the America's Rescue Plan and because of the next act, it's called the Jobs Plan, but it's going to be a ton of focus on infrastructure. And infrastructure means water, as well as roads and other things. But, when you think about water, the first time we looked at, and the reason I wanted to start a project in Pontiac is, one, because of affordability, but when we first started looking at lead in the water and lead in the pipes, it's at least $20 million to clean up just the pipes leading up to people's houses. Doesn't even touch on what goes on inside. So we're going to continue to work on this until we can get this problem solved, but it's a problem across the whole state, it's a problem across the whole country. I mean, we've had lead in pipes forever, so it's not new, but we're starting to gather resources and commitment to do something about it. So affordability is a piece of that. How do we make sure, because one of the things that happens in very poor areas is people will, just like with cable, they'll tap into the line. They'll do it with electricity too, and people sometimes die because of that, right? And if you tap into a water line, really bad things can happen. So affordability and being able to build systems where people can pay what they can afford to pay, you know, not just whatever the utility decides is the bill. In Michigan and probably in other cities around the country, we tend to charge more in poor communities than we do in wealthy communities for water, which is stunning to me. You know, it's, you know, it's bad enough to think that we would do it equal, because equal isn't good enough, but to do it in a way that actually punishes people for the fact that people have abandoned their cities and they're paying this massive bill for something that's not their fault, that it's empty. You know, the whole thing is outrageous. Sorry, this is a whole nother topic. I'm on my justice topic.
No, it makes so much sense. On your fountain piece, it may connect with that, but
well, in clean water, the idea of clean water is available to you. Clean water is in your community. Clean water, you know, you can message, you can expand it. You can, you know, fountains are just such a draw. They're such a draw for people. Clean water is a draw for people.
Yeah.
I just saw this morning the LA River is going to be processing its water that you can drink, and 70% of LA's water is going to come from the Los Angeles River.
Right, exactly. And there's so much technology. So you could take your fountain, could be connected, right, as part of a system that is also clean, fresh drinking water. That is also, I mean, you can really make cool stuff out of that. Make it part of a.
Yes, we have one at the
across the street that they put a tree in.
So one of the problems, and Katha can speak to this, I'm sure, on multiple examples, but when we work to get kids downtown, we're working with Oakland Family Services, and we ran a little design thinking program on the Hidden River Park. And one of the things was the fountain, and the you know, engaging them in what kind of statue could be there, what kind, you know, how could we get this thing back, you know, rolling with water. And I won't name names, but one group decided to apply for a grant to put a tree in the fountain, you know, plant a tree in the fountain. And it was basically to say that, you know, Pontiac can't afford fountains. And even though we're in the wealthiest county, one of the wealthiest counties in the country, and they represented a number of corporate entities and people that could be engaged in doing something positive. It was, you know, that's why we have a tree in our fountain here. But
oh my gosh, that's amazing. That's
awful. It's like that managed decline kind of mentality that
yeah. You start with the answer is no and go from there, right? Yeah.
So anyway, we could overcome that. And
I mean, and technically it would be great. You could bring in solar to power it. You could do, I mean, yeah. And I'm starting to think that there are really supportive companies in Pontiac that will help with stuff. No?
Yeah, there are, and you would hope that they would see the wisdom in that. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Tina, you had something here.
No, just that I have to run, and that I love these accessible ongoing conversations that you guys host. I really appreciate just the popping in of all the people and perspectives. And
I see you, Tina.
And thank you, Senator. Really,
Tina, if you could stick around for 1 minute, I wanted to go back to what you guys were just saying about recycling and kids and stuff.
Okay.
And this is actually in Spokane, where they had a dirty river and a waterfall right in the center of town, and the citizens came up with the idea to have an expo grounds there and to host this big event. And they basically reclaimed the whole land and turned it into a park. And there's this really famous thing there where it's these metal goats and they have vacuums in their mouths. So you kids run around the park and they pick up garbage and feed it to the goat, and the goat sucks it up. And so
I
you can
love it.
gamify, you know, the positive activities you want people to enact. And another thing that we're working on that Tina has had a lot of success with is this Kid Mayor program, where, like you were saying, getting kids involved in these solutions. So in our city and in Raleigh, kids came up with their platforms on what they would do, and it's mostly they want fountains, they want clean streets, they want stuff to do, they, you know, and this program is giving that voice to kids to be able to do say what they want and change these systems so that they're participatory and involved and place-based.
Very nice. I love that.
Yeah,
idea.
yeah, we're
You
getting
definitely want them to be involved because that's where you get the most creative ideas, right? If
right.
it's fun for kids, it's going to be fun for adults too. I mean, that's, you know, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This group gives testament that great things happen with a small amount
groups
of people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lindsay, we're not sure how much longer we have our good son